It seems like every day there's another headline about the rising rates of homelessness.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but sometimes it's easy to just feel overwhelmed by it all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
like, where do you even begin to try and understand such a complex issue?
Right.
But then you have someone like Elon Musk who decides to take a completely different approach.
Yeah, huh?
Instead of just reading about homelessness or donating to a charity, he decides to experience it firsthand. He goes undercover, disguises himself as homeless, and spends time living on the streets of Los Angeles.
Wow.
And we're going to be diving into that experience today using excerpts from this piece called Pasted Text
Okay.
to try and understand what he learned, what he saw, and how it changed him.
This is going to be fascinating. I mean, what really strikes me is that Musk didn't just want to observe homelessness from a distance. He really wanted to understand it viscerally, to feel what it was like to be invisible to society.
Right, and he went all out with the transformation. Secondhand clothes,
Yeah.
makeup to make him look weathered,
Mm-hmm.
even contact lenses to dull his eyes. The piece mentions that people who knew him wouldn't have recognized him.
I bet. But that physical transformation, that was just the beginning.
Yeah.
It sounds like almost immediately Musk felt this shift in how people interacted with him, or rather, how they didn't interact with him. People avoided making eye contact with him. They would cross the street when they saw him coming.
Yeah.
Basically treated him as if he didn't exist.
It's crazy to think about someone like Elon Musk.
Right.
I mean, he's usually the center of attention,
Uh-huh.
and then to suddenly become invisible like that.
It's a powerful experience. I think this experience of invisibility really gets to the heart of the psychological impact of homelessness.
Yeah.
When you're constantly ignored, dehumanized, it just erodes your sense of self-worth, your belief that you matter.
There's this one moment in Pasted Text that really stood out to me where Musk is sitting outside a coffee shop with an empty cup. He's not even begging or anything. And people are actively going out of their way to avoid him.
Oh, man. It makes you wonder how often we walk through the world completely oblivious to the struggles of others.
Right.
We're so focused on our own lives, our own destinations, that we don't even see the human beings right in front of us.
It's like we've developed this collective blindness to those who don't fit into our neat little boxes of what's acceptable or successful.
I know what you mean. And that blindness allows us to distance ourselves from the problem of homelessness.
Yeah.
It's easier to ignore it than to confront the systemic issues, the societal failures that contribute to it.
And Musk, during this experiment, he went by the name Eli.
Okay.
And he wasn't just passively observing this dynamic. He was experiencing it firsthand.
He was living it.
Yeah.
And, it didn't take long for him to realize that this invisibility, this feeling of being ignored, extended to almost every interaction he had.
Like that story about him trying to buy a taco from a food truck.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The cashier was so incredibly skeptical, didn't believe that he could even pay for it.
Right. And I mean, think about it. In his normal life, people are practically throwing money at him.
Exactly.
But here, just because of how he looks, he's viewed with suspicion, distrust.
Yeah, he's inherently untrustworthy.
That's crazy.
I mean, it really speaks volumes about the power of perception and the biases that we all carry,
Yeah.
We make these snap judgments based on appearances, and those judgments, those have very real consequences.
Especially for those on the margins of society.
Absolutely.
One of the most powerful parts of Pasted Text for me is how it reveals the systemic biases at play.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Musk witnesses a security guard unfairly removing a homeless woman from a park.
Oh, wow.
And she wasn't even doing anything wrong. She was just existing in a public space.
Just being there.
And yet she was treated like she was a nuisance.
That's awful. That incident really highlights how easily assumptions of wrongdoing are made about people experiencing homelessness.
Right.
There's often this presumption of criminality or mental illness,
Yeah.
which then leads to discriminatory treatment.
By law enforcement, those in positions of authority.
Exactly.
And things escalate even further
Oh.
when Musk has this run-in with police officers.
Oh, no.
And they target him for simply existing.
Wow.
Telling him to move along, physically intimidating him.
It's just heartbreaking, because what's so striking about this encounter is that even with all of his wealth and privilege,
Right.
even while he's undercover, Musk couldn't escape the harassment and the suspicion that so many homeless individuals face every single day.
It makes you think about all the countless others who don't have the platform or the resources that Musk has to speak out against this kind of injustice.
Right.
They're trapped in a system that basically criminalizes their very existence.
It's incredibly disheartening. This really exposes the vulnerability of those living on the streets
Yeah.
and underscores the urgent need for systemic change.
We need policies that address the root causes of homelessness.
Right. Not just policies that punish people for being homeless.
Exactly.
We need to get to the root of the problem.
Now, Paste-to-Text does offer this glimmer of hope
Okay, good.
amidst all this darkness. There's this moment where, in the middle of all the negativity and indifference,
Mm-hmm.
a stranger offers Musk a sandwich and a bottle of water. It's this simple act of kindness, but in that context, it feels incredibly powerful.
That small gesture is so significant because it demonstrates the profound impact of human connection, acknowledging someone's humanity,
Yeah.
even when society has deemed them invisible.
It reminds us that even when people are facing immense hardship and societal neglect,
Uh-huh.
these simple acts of kindness, these can make a real difference.
They can.
It's about seeing the person, not the circumstance.
That's such an important point, And that's a crucial takeaway as we kind of delve deeper into Musk's journey here.
Okay.
I'm curious, how do these individual encounters shape his perception? How does he go from just being an observer to becoming an advocate?
That's a great question, and something that we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
So Musk keeps going with his experiment, and he ventures into downtown Los Angeles.
Okay.
And he ends up in an alleyway with a group of homeless individuals. And this is where he really immerses himself in their world, right? He spends the night there, listening to their stories,
Wow.
witnessing their struggles firsthand.
That seems like a pretty pivotal point in his journey.
Yeah.
He's not just observing anymore. He's actually engaging with people whose lives are so different from his own.
Exactly. And it's in these raw conversations, unguarded moments,
Yeah.
that he really starts to see the complexities of homelessness, the individual stories.
The human side of it.
Yeah, like behind the statistics.
Right.
And one encounter really stands out in Paste-to-Text. He meets this man, Reggie,
Uh-huh.
and Reggie talks about how society just views them as, quote, trash cluttering up their city.
It's heartbreaking, That statement speaks to the dehumanizing effect of being rejected by society,
Yeah.
of being treated as disposable,
Like you don't matter.
unworthy of even basic respect.
Reggie's words, they reveal the psychological toll of constantly feeling invisible.
Yeah.
When you're told over and over again that you don't matter, that you're a burden, it just erodes your hope for the future.
And it's not just words, right?
Right.
Paste-to-Text talks about how a security guard comes and forces the group to leave the alley,
Ow.
scattering them back into the night.
So they can't even find refuge in an alleyway.
It seems like this constant threat of displacement,
Yeah.
of being denied even a temporary safe space,
Yeah.
just adds another layer of stress and trauma.
It's like the arrival of that security guard represents these systemic forces that perpetuate this cycle of homelessness.
Yeah.
There's this lack of safe spaces.
Affordable housing.
Support services for people struggling with mental health issues, addiction.
And instead of trying to address these root causes, society just criminalizes homelessness
Right, pushing people further to the margins.
rather than offering a path back to stability and dignity.
Yeah, and it creates this vicious cycle that's so hard to break free from.
It is. But in Paste-to-Text,
Okay.
they suggest that Musk's encounter with Reggie and the stories of others like him, they spark a turning point in his understanding.
I see. He starts to see things differently.
Yeah, it's like he's realizing that homelessness isn't just about lacking shelter. It's about a lack of opportunity, a lack of support, a lack of basic human dignity.
It's about being denied these fundamental things that most of us take for granted.
Exactly. And this realization, it seems to fuel his desire to go beyond just observing the problem.
To find solutions.
And that brings us to this really powerful moment in Paste-to-Text where Musk's passive observation turns into this direct action.
What happened?
He sees this young homeless boy trying to steal a loaf of bread from a local market.
Oh, wow.
This scene is really pivotal because it forces him to confront the consequences of societal indifference.
Right, here's this child driven to desperate measures because he's hungry.
And nobody's helping him.
Nobody's even trying to understand his situation.
The piece describes the store clerk yelling at the boy, calling him a thief, while bystanders are just standing there watching.
Doing nothing.
It's like this normalization of suffering,
Yeah.
a desensitization to the struggles of those around us.
People have become numb to it.
Yeah, but Musk, he can't just stand by and watch.
He has to do something.
Yeah, and the emotional impact of his experiences.
Yeah.
It culminates in this moment.
He can't stay undercover anymore.
He breaks character.
Wow.
He steps in to defend the boy, tells the clerk to let him go,
Good for him.
offers to pay for the bread himself.
That's amazing. It's like an act of defiance, a rejection of all the apathy and indifference he's seen.
And this moment, it really seems to mark a shift in Musk's journey.
I bet.
He's no longer content with just observing. He feels compelled to act, to use his resources to make a difference.
I'm curious, so what happens next? He goes back to his team, right?
He does.
Changed by what he's seen.
Visibly change.
And he decides to do something about it. He wants to use his platform to shine a light on this whole issue of homelessness.
Yeah, and instead of announcing a new product or some technological breakthrough, he organizes this press conference
Okay.
to share his experience and to launch an initiative to combat homelessness.
Wow, and what does he call it?
He calls it the Dignity Project.
The Dignity Project. I like that.
And his transformation becomes more than just personal at this point.
Right, he's going beyond himself.
Yeah, he's leveraging his influence to advocate for systemic change.
To inspire others to act.
They challenge how society views homelessness.
The Dignity Project, as described in pasted text,
Yeah.
it's pretty multifaceted. It's not just about giving people a place to stay.
Right, it's more holistic than that.
It aims to address those root causes.
Like offering education opportunities.
Job training, mental health services, even help with getting legal documentation.
Yeah, it's about empowering these individuals to rebuild their lives.
To break free from this cycle of poverty.
To reclaim their dignity.
I mean, some people might question his motives.
Sure.
Or even doubt how effective such a big project can be.
Yeah, but pasted text highlights how the Dignity Project has already made a difference.
Really?
People have gotten off the streets, found jobs,
That's incredible.
gained control of their lives.
It shows that even though homelessness is such a complex issue,
Yeah.
solutions are possible.
When we approach it with compassion and understanding.
And a willingness to actually invest in long-term solutions.
Exactly. So Musk's journey from observer to advocate,
Yeah.
it's a powerful example of how a personal experience can lead to these profound shifts in perspective.
And inspire action.
But what are the broader implications of this experiment?
Right. What can we learn from his experience?
Besides just the individual stories.
Let's dive into those questions
Okay.
as we finish up our exploration of pasted text in the final part of our deep dive.
It's fascinating how this whole experience really challenged Musk's worldview.
Yeah.
Like he went in with these assumptions about homelessness, but the reality, it was so much more complex than he could have imagined.
I think that just underscores the idea that lived experience is so valuable.
Yeah.
Like no amount of research or data
Right.
can really replace actually walking in someone else's shoes.
Seeing the world through their eyes.
Exactly.
And I think that's ultimately what led to this profound change in Musk's perspective.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about observing the problem intellectually, it was about feeling it,
Yeah. Understanding those human stories behind the statistics.
And that emotional connection, that's often what motivates us to actually do something.
To take action.
It's no longer just an abstract issue, it becomes personal.
Right. It becomes a responsibility.
And that sense of responsibility, that's what really sets Musk apart in this story.
Yeah.
He could have easily just walked away from the experience,
Made a donation.
gone back to his life, but he didn't.
He chose to do something.
Yeah, he used his platform to advocate for change.
That's a powerful example of what we call allyship.
Okay.
It's about using your own position, your resources, to support those who are marginalized.
To amplify their voice.
To fight for a more just society.
And it's not about speaking for them.
Right.
It's about creating space for them to speak for themselves.
Exactly.
And empowering them to advocate for their own needs.
And that's what we see with Musk, right? He didn't try to position himself as a savior.
Right.
He used his platform to elevate the stories of the people that he met.
The people on the streets.
To challenge those perceptions of homelessness.
And he backed up his words with action.
Yeah.
Like the Dignity Project, it wasn't just some PR stunt.
Right.
It was a genuine effort to make a real difference.
It might have had its flaws,
Yeah.
but the intention was there.
It's a reminder that actions speak louder than words.
True allyship,
Uh-huh.
it requires more than just empathy.
Yeah.
It requires a commitment to action,
To actually do something.
to finding those solutions.
So what does all of this mean for us?
Right. What can we learn from Musk's experiment?
Even if we don't have his level of resources.
Yeah. What can the average person do?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is the power of perspective.
Okay.
We all have these blind spots, biases, assumptions
Mhm.
that shape how we see the world.
It's easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles.
And forget that other people experience life very
We
differently.
forget what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes.
And Musk's journey, it really encourages us to step outside of those comfortable bubbles.
To actively seek out new perspectives.
Yeah, to challenge our assumptions about those who are different from us.
And to be open to learning and growing.
To recognize our own privilege
Yeah.
and use it to create a more just world for everyone.
Not just for those who are like us.
Exactly.
And it's about taking action.
Even if it's just in small ways.
Right. We might not be able to launch huge initiatives.
But we can find ways to make a difference in our communities.
Absolutely. Whether it's volunteering our time at a shelter,
Donating to a food bank,
just having a conversation with someone who's experiencing homelessness.
treating everyone with dignity and respect.
We all have a role to play.
You know, this deep dive has really given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's a powerful reminder that real change, it starts with each of us.
Examining our biases,
Yeah.
taking responsibility for our actions.
Choosing to be part of the solution.
You know, the world is full of challenges,
Mhm.
but it's also full of opportunities.
It all starts with choosing to see the invisible.
And act with empathy.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive, and we hope you'll continue to explore these important issues with us in future episodes.